The stage of global politics is once again trembling under the weight of uncertainty. As the war in Ukraine grinds into yet another brutal chapter, the world watches a dangerous dance between leaders whose decisions can reshape the fate of millions. On one side, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky struggles to keep alive the hope of international support, peace talks, and the faint possibility of ending the bloodshed. On the other side, Russia's Vladimir Putin projects strength, caution, and a deep unwillingness to appear desperate. Hovering in between is Donald Trump, who with a single statement can shift the headlines, casting doubt on whether Putin even wants a deal in the first place. This is not just a news update. This is a high-stakes game of power, pride, and perception. The Kremlin's decision to play down the significance of Zelensky's recent outreach reflects more than just political theater. It is part of a calculated strategy, one that signals to both domestic and international audiences that Russia holds the upper hand. By brushing aside talks, Moscow reinforces the image that it is not Kyiv who decides the terms of war or peace, but the Kremlin. This posture is designed to demoralize Ukraine, unsettle its allies, and create a narrative where Russia is never the one knocking on the door of negotiations. To admit eagerness for talks would be to admit weakness. And in Putin's political dictionary, weakness does not exist. But the complexity deepens when Trump enters the stage with his own warning. His statement that Putin may not even want a deal is not just a passing remark. It is a bombshell in the already fragile architecture of global diplomacy. For Ukraine, it raises a haunting question. If Russia's leader is not truly interested in compromise, then what hope is left for peace? For Russia, it adds another layer of uncertainty, for even America's former leader is publicly voicing doubts about Putin's intentions, and for the rest of the world, it becomes yet another reminder that this war is not just about land or borders, it is about the psychology of power, where ego and perception weigh heavier than human lives. Every time the word deal is spoken, millions of people in Ukraine wonder what that means for them. Will it mean a ceasefire that saves lives but freezes the conflict? Will it mean territorial concessions that tear away pieces of their homeland? Or will it mean nothing at all, a word thrown into the air as bombs continue to fall? For families hiding in basements, for soldiers on the front lines, for children growing up in fear, these high-level political maneuvers mean survival or despair. Yet, as leaders spar over narratives and deals, the voices of those suffering most are drowned out. Trump's words cut deep because they expose a fear that many have silently carried, that Putin may have no interest in ending this war on any terms short of outright victory. If that is true, then every diplomatic effort, every negotiation, every round of peace talks becomes nothing more than a stage show. And yet, the international community clings to the idea of dialogue because the alternative, endless war, with no off-ramp, so devastating to imagine. At the same time, Putin's refusal to embrace talks does not mean he has no strategy. Quite the opposite. By showing disinterest, he pressures the West to eventually fracture in its support for Ukraine. He knows that every passing month, public opinion in Europe and America grows more fatigued. He knows that economic costs, energy shortages, and political divisions weaken the unity of Ukraine's allies. By dragging out the war and dismissing talks, Putin's calculation is simple. Time is on Russia's side. And if Trump's remarks add to doubts within the West, then Moscow has scored yet another victory without firing a single shot. This is why the moment is so dangerous. Perception drives politics as much as reality. If allies begin to believe that Putin has no genuine intention of making peace, their willingness to invest resources, weapons, and political capital in Ukraine could waver. And if Zelensky loses that backing, Ukraine faces isolation in the middle of the storm. For him, every signal, every remark, every word from a figure like Trump is magnified tenfold. It is not just commentary. it is fuel for the narratives that shape survival. Beyond the immediate players, the global consequences cannot be ignored. A prolonged war in Ukraine is not just Europe's problem, it is the world's. Food shortages ripple through Africa and the Middle East. Energy crises destabilize economies in Europe and beyond. Military buildups shift balances in Asia, where other powers watch and wait to see how the West responds. If Russia emerges emboldened, it sends a chilling signal to authoritarian leaders everywhere that might makes right. And that international law is little more than words on paper. Trump's warning, then, is both a critique and a challenge. If Putin does not want to deal, then what options remain? Is the world prepared to pour endless support into Ukraine for years to come? Is the West ready to endure economic pain, political division, and the risks of escalation indefinitely? Or will fatigue eventually push leaders into accepting an unjust peace? These are not just theoretical questions. They are the questions shaping the decisions of parliaments, congresses, and cabinets across the world. Yet the war is also a war of narratives. Putin thrives on the idea that Russia is standing strong against the West, resisting pressure and refusing to bow. Zelensky thrives on the opposite narrative that Ukraine is fighting for freedom, democracy, and survival. And Trump, in his own way, thrives on injecting himself into these global debates, ensuring that his voice remains central even when he is out of office. Each narrative collides with the others, and somewhere between them lies the truth. A war with no easy solutions, and a peace that remains a distant dream. For ordinary people, these grand narratives feel distant and cruel. While leaders debate whether Putin wants a deal, bombs fall on Ukrainian homes. While politicians calculate geopolitical strategies, families bury their dead. While diplomats craft talking points, millions of refugees wonder if they will ever return to their homes. The contrast between elite negotiations and human suffering is stark. And it underscores why commentary like Trump's resonates so deeply, reflects the deep skepticism people feel about whether leaders are truly seeking peace or merely playing politics. The tragedy of this war is not just the destruction of cities or the displacement of millions. It is also the erosion of trust. Trust in diplomacy, trust in negotiations, trust in the possibility that dialogue can end violence. When Trump says Putin may not want to make a deal, he articulates a fear that this war is not about talks or compromise, it is about domination. And if that is the case, then the path ahead is darker than anyone dares to admit. Still, history teaches that even the most intractable conflicts eventually end at a negotiating table. The question is not whether a deal will be made, but when and on whose terms. If Putin refuses to talk now, it may be because he believes time will grant him better leverage later. If Trump warns of this refusal, it may be a reminder to the world not to be naive about Moscow's intentions. But whatever the motives, the war drags on, and the cost is measured in lives. Not in words. In the end, what the world is witnessing is not just a battle over Ukraine, it is a battle over the future of international order itself. Can a powerful nation invade its neighbor and dictate terms through force? Or will the collective pressure of the world eventually compel compromise? These are the stakes, and they are larger than any one leader's ego. Yet for now, the signals are grim. The Kremlin shrugs off Zelensky's efforts. Trump casts doubt on Putin's intentions. And the war continues without mercy. And so, the world waits. It waits for a breakthrough that may never come, for a moment of clarity that could be years away. It waits for leaders to decide whether peace is possible or whether war is destiny. In the silence between bombs and speeches, in the gap between promises and realities, humanity holds its breath, watching, fearing, and hoping that somewhere, somehow, a deal will still be made.